Jeff Andresen, you know what? I'm tired of stepping out of my house every day and having a heat stroke. Can you please tell me that the weather going to improve in the next week or so?
Well, I can, but it won't be maybe as fast as you like. But there is definitely change to talk about. And my theme today, and it's just I answer Ricardo's question here. When and that is in the near future. We're going to see at least a temporary end, and I almost put the word temporary in here because as we will also see longer term, this warmer than normal pattern that we're in, it has a lot to do with the jet stream flow over North America. It's not going to go away for very long and probably come back. What you're looking at here, the map, this is a forecast of surface temperature anomalies. The blues and purples are cooler than normal, and the reds are the opposite, and this is for Sunday afternoon. So the back to the question is, when is this going to come to an end? Well, fairly soon. The other maybe even more important question is, what about water? And I'll talk a lot about that here in just a couple of minutes to follow up on Asen's talk about drainage. Will we need drainage? But looking at the past week here, I'll start there, a hot and dry week. There's no other way to describe it. Mean temperatures on the left here are ranging from 6 to more than 10 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, especially across northern parts of the state. We have actually had parts of the Upper Peninsula that were 12 degrees above normal. We don't see that too often for the week. And on the right-hand side here, these are precipitation totals. These are through yesterday, so the rainfall that we got yesterday is not reflected here, but a couple things of note. One is that some parts of the state have still done fairly well. And central upper Michigan would be one of those. You can see here 1 to 2 inches across that part of the state, and actually across large portions of the Upper Peninsula, they did have decent rain. But over the lower, much less, and it's scattered at best. Many spots here had no precip. The majority of the state had no precip. And if you were lucky enough to be under one of the isolated showers or thunderstorms that formed, in some cases you got appreciable rain. I don't even want to bring this up, but I happen to live just north of Hazlet, and one of those storms formed over me yesterday afternoon, and between 2:15 and 3:15, I picked up 1.55 inches. It rained hard, and basically the thunderstorm just sat there. It didn't move, and that's why we again, with the heavy rate over a long period of time, and I had no rain prior to that for 10 consecutive days. And it's also in other consecutive days, it's also worth mentioning that for many parts of the state, yesterday was in some cases the 9th consecutive day of max temperatures at or above 90 degrees. That's something else we don't see very often in Michigan. Typically there's less than half a dozen days of 90-degree maximum temperatures, and we've already exceeded that in most of the state. And so the long and the short of it here, looking ahead, today is the last day, at least for a little while, that we will see 90 degrees. So I think that's a positive thing in most people's minds. One other thing here, a couple of other notes on where we are. Degree days with the hot week, its totals have surged. These are departures from normal, and this is the seasonal totals beginning on May 1. And all of the state now is ahead of normal. Remember, for the last few weeks, we've been very close to the long-term climatological normals, but with that hot week, we now have jumped ahead. In terms of calendar time, several days ahead of normal across the far south to more than a calendar week ahead of normal in the north. So that 1 week made a fairly significant difference in our GDD totals. But again, I think the real issue here is the lack of water, and we've been without precipitation or had lighter than normal precipitation over many areas of the state. This is a 30-day precipitation total expressed as a percent of normal. And what you can see is that the vast majority of the lower peninsula, save the northwestern portion and a couple of odds and ends down in the south here, generally running between 50 and 75% of normal. There are a few locations in southeastern lower Michigan that are less than half of normal. And if we convert that into totals, we'd be somewhere on the order of 1 to 2 inches. Some locations are approaching 3 inches below normal here just for the last 5 weeks or so. So that's pretty significant. On the right-hand side here, this is simulated soil moisture in the top 40 inches of the soil profile, the top meter. And you can see here that just really over the last few weeks, we've had rapid development of unusually dry conditions. And the soil moisture values here, volumetric soil moistures levels here are less than, well, in the 20th percentile or less over pretty significant areas of southern and especially southeastern lower Michigan. That's one of the driest areas. There also are abnormally dry conditions to our north and west, way up in western portions of upper Michigan. But the other I think, inescapable conclusion here is that dryness has intensified over large areas of the Midwest, and that certainly includes portions of Michigan, but also Indiana, neighboring Indiana, Ohio, and also portions of the Western Corn Belt as well. That's something we're going to need to watch, especially given where the forecast or what the forecast is suggesting. So this morning here on the weather map, the frontal boundary that moved into the state here a day and a half ago as a weak cold front and set off some convection, that has now moved and returned northward as a warm front, bringing warm and humid. One of the things you've probably noticed over the last couple of days, our dew point temperatures have gone up as the humidity's gone up, and we've had some 70-degree minimum temperatures. That's also unusual for Michigan, but there's a lot of water vapor in the air. The next weather system really of major consequence, the most important one, is off here to our north and west, and that's this cold front, as you can see in the northern plains, and that will be moving through Michigan, well, beginning later tonight in the upper peninsula, but over the lower peninsula here during the day tomorrow. And that really is it represents our best chance for widespread significant rainfall that we've seen in at least a week, in some cases probably more than 2 weeks, and probably for the next several days as well. So it's an important one. You can see on the radar time lapse of the last hour here, there already are some showers and thunderstorms out ahead of this cold front, including one area here that's moved through the upper peninsula overnight or in the early morning hours and will move into the northern lower. That probably will dissipate with time. But caveat with that, we're going to see a repeat performance of what we saw yesterday. By mid-afternoon, we'll have enough heat and humidity down to low levels and some existing old boundaries left over from convection the last couple days. They will fire up more showers and thunderstorms this afternoon and evening, especially across the interior areas of lower Michigan. So very, very similar, but I think a little bit better coverage than what we had over yesterday or the day before that. So there will be more rainfall possible here this afternoon. And then by tomorrow, the front you can see just entering the western lower peninsula. That's going to be our best chance for rain over most areas from west to east. It'll clear the state by late tomorrow night, but we should see fairly widespread shower and thunderstorm activity with the system as it goes through. Right now, because of the timing of this, it's coming through. This is 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's one of the most stable times of the day. Typically, we'll probably see, because of that, we'll probably see the greatest totals and greatest aerial coverage in central and in eastern portions of lower Michigan. And that's actually not too bad news for some of the southeastern areas that have been missed by rainfall repeatedly over the last few weeks. But very, very good likelihood or increasing likelihood that we will see rain pretty much everywhere. And then by Saturday, you can see it moves off to the east with a few lingering showers left in the southeast, and then it's replaced by high pressure. Well, one of the other big stories with this, it is a cold front and it does have slightly cooler air. It's not going to, but it will be noticeable. And so we will see beginning late tomorrow and then into the weekend, we'll see a drop off probably on the order of 5 to 10 degrees from where we've been. So today will be the last 90-degree day for at least a little while. And then by tomorrow, we'll be in the 80s in most locations. And then this weekend, probably upper 70s north to low, maybe a couple mid 80s in the south. So it's definitely cooler and noticeably cooler, but nothing really earth-shattering. And nighttime will be another noticeable difference. We will be back down into the upper 50s north to the low 60s for low. So it will be much more comfortable in the evening than it has been here recently. And that will continue through the weekend and into early next week. There's also a chance, given some cooler air aloft with this particular system, we could see some isolated showers develop on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, but they will be scattered or, isolated, probably scattered at best. And I think the best chances for those probably will be across southern parts of the state if they occur at all. Most areas will remain dry and a little bit cooler here this weekend. There will be more chances for precipitation, though, next week, and also a warming trend after this. I think that's an important one. We do see ridging, upper air ridging coming back. That's been the factor here with the heat and humidity recently. That should return by the middle of next week. So look for more 90-degree max temperatures probably by maybe Wednesday or Thursday of next week, and then for a few more days possibly after that as the heat builds in. In terms of precip, how much? And this is an interesting one. You can see for much of the state, 1/2 to 1 inch totals are forecast for the next week. And I think a major point with this is 2 and 3 days ago when we looked at this guidance, the forecast models, the forecast guidance was much less bullish on precipitation, much significantly lighter totals than you see right now. So as we go with time, there's a lot of water vapor, a lot of raw material there, what moisture to work with this system. It's looking more and more like we will see significant rainfall here over the next 24 to 36 hours. Most of these totals that you see here are the rainfall tomorrow and then into early Saturday. But there will be some this afternoon, overnight tonight, and then possibly on a daily basis on into next week. But the majority of this is what occurs on Friday. So I think that's positive news. Our potential evapotranspiration rates, the water demand, still higher than normal. Looking at the upcoming week, this actually doesn't go out a complete week, but the totals here suggest daily PET rates on the order of about 0.2 of an inch, maybe 21, 22 hundredths. And that is still fairly large for Michigan, but it is less than what we have seen over the last couple of weeks. We've seen very high rates of potential evapotranspiration, sometimes up near 1/4 of an inch, and that's top end climatologically for Michigan. So the trend there is at least less than it has been over the last couple of weeks. And again, for the areas that lack moisture, that's an important factor. Medium range forecast guidance in general is suggesting a return of the upper air pattern that we've seen here recently with troughs over far western and eastern sections of North America, and then a broad ridge here in between. The 6 to 10 day and the 8 to 14 day outlooks are almost identical. And underneath that big ridge, it's a very, very strong likelihood that we will see mean temperatures warmer than normal or above normal. And you can see that indicated here in the upper right. The tougher one is the precipitation with this type of a pattern. And it's going to be very important. I think there will be a very strong north to south gradient, as is suggested here with precip, with a storm track right along the U.S.-Canadian border. And so there will be frequent chances for rain, just depending on how far north or south you are. And you can see, at least for the guidance right now, it's suggesting that Michigan is going to be closer to that storm track, and they actually have normal to above normal totals. It's been a little while since we've seen that, but note, not too far to our south and west, there's a large area of drier than normal conditions. And that's something to really keep an eye on here over the next few weeks, because I mentioned the large areas of the Midwest are becoming unfavorably dry, or actually are unfavorably dry now, where some of the crops to our south are already moving into, silking, pollination, tasseling, sensitive stages here. Water matters, and this forecast here will have a major influence, or potentially a major influence on that, depending again on how far north or south you are. Right now, again for Michigan, it looks like it will be a little bit on the better side in terms of moisture. The 3 to 4 week outlook, which looks at the last 2 weeks of July, a similar theme here. All of the lower 48 states you can see are forecast to be warmer than normal, and it has to do with that upper air pattern I just talked about. Also, note here, this one suggests drier than normal conditions over virtually all of the Corn Belt and on it into the Great Lakes region, including Michigan. So it's something that definitely we need to keep an eye on and watch for how long this pattern will continue. But the safest bet is right now that the above normal, the warmer than normal weather, I think it's here for at least the next several weeks. And July definitely is going to go into the books warmer than normal, and probably for many areas drier than normal too. But we'll see here. The best chances for rain with this pattern that we're looking at probably coming up next week and then into the next weekend, where again we might see some above normal totals. So summarizing, how long for the heat wave? Well, one more day of that, and then some relief after that, and not just heat, but more importantly, we should see water across most areas of the state, and with any luck, we'll see widespread half-inch amounts here, most likely during the day tomorrow. But there will be rainfall possible this afternoon and then over the weekend on a more scattered basis. Temperatures falling back about 5 to 10 degrees after this next weather system moves through later tomorrow during the day tomorrow, so it will be more pleasant and we'll be closer to the normal. But the medium range forecast guidance, as you just saw, does strongly suggest that ridge comes back here with time, and we certainly go to warmer than normal, and depending on how far north or south you are, we may see a range of conditions from wetter than normal to even drier than normal once again. So with that, I'll wrap up and move to a reminder for next week. And our speaker next week, Dr. Chris Stefanzo, is going to be talking about insects, as she often does. So don't miss that. That's a week from today, next Thursday. And with that, I will say thanks for attention and see if anyone has any questions. So Ricardo, back to you.
Thank you, Jeff. You made my day. So I'm happy with what you told me, at least for a while. The first question is, when you compare 19 to 20, can we say that our rain was better distributed in 2020 compared to 19, or not quite?
I think it depends somewhat on where you are, but 19 and last year, for much of the state, we went from excessive rainfall, of course, in the spring to a lack of rainfall, but that occurred mostly during the middle to latter part of the summer. The dryness and just as importantly, the very, very high PET type of pattern that we were in much of June, the dryness this year has come earlier than it did last year. So I would say this year, if we get rain, and there's a great deal of optimism, yes, we have stress out there. A lot of it's on coarser soils that hold less water, or where we have compaction problems. You can see that in fields right now with the stress. But the good news is that there still is water at depth, and the roots are being forced down deeper. That's a positive thing. So if we do get precipitation here on a timely basis here and out, we should be in good shape. Last year was a little bit different because, again, we had such a extended wet period early, and it left many of the crops with a relatively shallow rooting system. And then when we did turn the water off late July and August, we did have some problems. So if you were to have to pick one, I would still take maybe this year, but the system bears watching with this big ridge over the middle of the country. That definitely needs to be watched. It could stay around for a while, and that would not be favorable.
All right. Jeff, one more question. That's from Mark, and he said, hey, your forecast saw for rain for tomorrow is only 65% chance. So he saw that somewhere else. He said that your forecast sounds better. Do you agree that we have a 35% of chance of not getting rain tomorrow? He's saying sorry for being skeptical, but he's also being hopeful.
No. Well, and I would say I've been skeptical, but yesterday afternoon with a localized thunderstorm right over my house, it made me think and realize that a lot can happen. But regarding the question, the precipitation probabilities, again, it's going to depend on where you are. I think the area where I would say has the highest likelihood of not seeing significant precip will probably be along the western portions of lower Michigan, because of the timing of that cold front coming through. If we could have delayed that a few hours and got a little bit of heat and instability out ahead of it, I'd say we have great odds of getting all of the state here. But right now, that probably for the western part of the state, that 65-35 number probabilities probably is not too bad. But as you go east from there into central and eastern lower Michigan, I think we're talking much higher, probably 80-20, maybe even better than that. So there may be some areas that are missed. Unfortunately, there usually are with these systems, but I think the vast majority of the lower will see rainfall with that system as it goes through.
All right, Jeff, thanks so much. Go green.